Hello, and welcome to the Kick It with Katie podcast. I am your host, Katie Colliker, and thank you for joining me today. I am super excited about today's episode, an interview with Will Bagrou that I did, and I'm super excited to share that with you. I do want to apologize for my absence. I really wanted to get these podcast episodes out and running, and then I got sick, and some of my interviewees got sick and scheduling issues, so I want to apologize for that. But I am super excited for today's episode and upcoming episodes as well. If anybody is interested in being interviewed for the podcast, you can email me at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. That will be in the episode description. And you can also reach out to me on Instagram at Kick It with Katie podcast and underscore between all the words. But that's where you can find me on Instagram, and you can see pictures from past episodes and future episodes. And today's episode, I have some pictures up for you guys to see for our interviewee, Will Bagrou. He grew up in Utah. He played for Sparta United, and then he moved to Georgia. And I will let him tell you all the other places that he has been. If you can give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, that just makes this podcast more available to those people looking for this content. So if you want to give me a review over there, that would be great. I could give you a shout out. But again, I'm super excited for this episode and future episodes. So please make sure you subscribe so you can get notifications when new episodes drop. Here is my interview with Will Bagrou.
Let's do it.
Okay, so basically, I just want you to tell me about your experience growing up playing soccer. Just share your story, your thoughts, your experiences, just like first memories. Tell your story. So like, I know, like, seeing you grow up, watching you growing up and watching you play and everything. So I kind of know your story, but I don't know obviously your side of it. I just know us watching you grow up and seeing you go through all of your experiences, but I want to hear your side of it and what your thoughts on it are and how.
Of course.
Yeah, just go for it.
I think my first memory playing it was when I was like 4. I believe it was either 4 or 5, and it was the park that I always remember is Flatiron Mesa. For whatever reason, I think that's where like I first started really playing soccer, and I remember I got put into like a rec team by my parents and called like the Super Tigers. I still remember that, and Justice was my coach. And I just remember I just loved it so much from such like a young age. My favorite thing was always to score goals, and so being able to do that at a young age was also really great. And you know, my earliest memory too is one of my teammates, Devin. Growing up with him, playing soccer every day at his house, going to tournaments together as we got older. That I think it's so unique that I always think like me, Justice, and Devin really like started the whole thing when it comes to our team and our core with Sparta. Just so young, from the age of 4, me and him getting coached by him all the way up until I eventually left in my senior year of high school, so like 16 or 17 years old. So to have the same coach from 4 to 17, I think is definitely unique. Just because I'm seeing like the youth system here, like they usually have coaches for like 2 or 3 seasons and then they get moved on to another coach. So having Justice from 4 to 17 is something I'm really appreciative for, and I think it definitely helped my development because having one perspective and one coach just being more hands-on with me, I think helped me out in the long run at the end of the day. But yeah, that's my first memory playing soccer is with that recreational team. I think we rarely lost. I think we really lost the game.
Yeah, I know he said you guys played up and just when you guys would score goals, just the light, the smile on your face and just the excitement and the love of it. So unique and fun, and just seeing how much you loved it.
Yeah. I think we did play up, and I forgot that we did just because competition in our age group, we were just like a really, really good team. So we had to play up
Mm-hmm.
to get more competition and to further our development. And I do appreciate Justice in that regard because he could have easily just kept us in the same age group and us just, you know, go on and win every single game. But I think it really helped our development as well, playing against older players. So like when State
Mm-hmm.
Cup came around, you know, in our age group, I think that's why we were also like really, really successful. Going back down to our age group, you know, physically and our speed of play was, I think, you know, a bit higher than the other teams. I love
Mm-hmm.
it. I loved it so much. I think, you know, Justice obviously helped me a lot in my youth game, and we were always, you know, I think at one point in our time we were like number three team in the country as well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and you know, we always had the hard times
Which,
against the California teams, but it was a
yeah,
big deal at that time. You know, like I don't think I really do think, you know, for sure Justice and our team helped put like Utah soccer on the map in some regard because to my knowledge, I don't know of many teams that were such like highly ranked coming from our state. So
yeah.
it was a really good experience.
And back then there weren't all these different leagues either that it was truly the best of the best playing each other. So there weren't all, the DA, MLS Next, ECNL, GA, E64, there weren't all these
Hmm.
different leagues that everybody was so spread out in. It was legit the top teams in the nation were competing against each other. So you guys definitely played against a lot of really good teams when you guys
Yeah.
would travel.
Hmm.
Do you have a favorite tournament memory, favorite tournament that you went to with the team?
I
I mean,
think
you
the
guys
favorite
went to a lot of
tournament we went
places.
to a lot, we went to a lot of places. I liked Dallas Cup. I wish we, you know, got further in that tournament, and I also just loved going to Hawaii too, just because it's Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
So for
Right.
regionals, we were lucky enough to go twice. But I'm trying to think of like a tournament where we just, I think Vegas, always those Thanksgiving Cups, we always did really, really well. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Going to finals and getting close and winning as well. I think those are my top three tournaments, and I loved Vegas for sure, but I think Hawaii just
How
because it
about
was so
Surf
much
Cup?
fun. Surf Cup, I love Surf Cup. I love Surf Cup. I just wish again we just went further because I think we had such
We
a
went
good
further.
team, and every
I
single
know.
time we went to Surf Cup, I don't know what happened. We didn't perform well, but I do love Surf Cup. It was a lot of fun too, but just left a bad taste in my mouth, I guess.
We were talking about Dallas Cup and some of the
Yeah.
national team players that were in the World Cup
Hmm.
just now,
Hmm.
and how some of the times that you guys were there. And he's like, I wonder if we watched them play,
That's
because
true.
some of the players, could have been there at the same time,
Hmm.
super group games or something like that. So he kind of wonders if he's like, I wish I still had my programs. I don't think he still has any of the programs, but
Yeah.
he's like, that'd be kind of cool
Yeah,
to
that
have
would be
that.
cool. And then like seeing other professional teams there too, like Arsenal, I think was there, and
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea, and getting pictures
Yeah.
with those professional players. And obviously FC Dallas as well. Like I really do wonder if some of those players were in this World Cup.
Yeah, because I know in one of the, I can't remember which U.S. game it was we were watching, but they were, talking about some of the players on the national team that were at Dallas Cup, and so,
Hmm.
it was just pretty cool. I can't remember which ones, but we were trying to think. I wonder if we saw them play, and that would
Yeah.
have been really, cool to be able to experience that. What do you think? I mean, I have an inkling of what I think it could have been, but
Hmm.
what would you say was a big major obstacle for you as a youth
I think
player?
injuries was a lot. It was really really tough when I was young. I like always had knee problems,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it was that was an obstacle to for me to get over was dealing with injuries and I think I don't know my I thought my development was really good, obviously with justice, but I'm also trying to think. I always wanted to get on the region team as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know that was always a difficult thing for me to do as well, just because, and I always say that because it ties into the amount of injuries that I had when I was younger. I feel like it was pretty difficult. But I'm interested to hear what you thought it was. So maybe it'll spark something in my head.
How did your move affect you? Because you
Uh,
moved when you were a teenager,
hmm.
so I'm curious how your move. affected you, if you feel like it did at all, you know. I mean, you're a well-established player, but moving across the country, you know, I'm curious if that hindered anything for you, or if you were kind of, you know, slotted in well and you meshed well with your team back east, if that, you know, if that felt hard for you at all.
It was really hard. And now that I think about it, because I was so focused on Utah, yeah, it was really hard when I moved just because it was my senior year, and I just felt like, you know, we had a really good group of guys um, with Sparta too, and you know, the next step with me would be college, and so I
Mm-hmm.
think I had a better reputation on the west side, on the west coast, and so maybe like a UVU, or I was getting looks from San Diego State at the time as well. Would have would have been knocking on my door and would have been a lot easier for me. But when I did move, I you know, it was hard for me to even find a club because I just moved for, you know, for my dad and his work. So it's not like I
Mm-hmm.
had any connections out there. So it was hard. It
Mm-hmm.
felt like I was starting from the ground up again. And it's just like, it's a funny story though. We were finding a high school for me in the area here in Georgia, and it's called Centennial High School. And we were just like looking for like the soccer coach of the high school team, just, you know, to see if he had any connections, and seeing if he could help me out to get like on a club team here. And so he
Mm-hmm.
was like, "Yeah, I know, you know, a guy. His name is Tony Nunn, which ended up being my coach. He was director of the club team, and also he was a head coach of the academy team, Georgia United, which is now Atlanta United.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to the tryout like the second day I'm in Georgia, and I'm just like really unfit too, and it was a really difficult situation for me. But I went out, and you know, I did my best, and then he invited me to come train with the academy team after just one day of practice with the club team. And so like I went over there, and you know, I played for like a week with the academy team, and then he ended up giving me a spot on the academy. But that was just like the first obstacle I had to get was to find a team. And then it was like when I found the team, it was really hard for me to be cemented into like the starting lineup. I felt like I deserved to
Mm-hmm.
be in it, but you know, being the new guy, it was just really hard. That group of guys that previous season like made it to the finals or something of academy playoffs, so it was a really good team. So it was difficult the first 6 months or the first half of the season because academy is split up, you know, fall and spring. So all fall, I played maybe one game, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like really hard because it was my senior year. I didn't have like a school to go to. San Diego State pulled their offer from me just because I wasn't playing. So they just didn't give me a lot of money. And that was the main team that I
Mm-hmm.
had, so I wasn't really heavily recruited at this point. It was really difficult. It was stressful. But then it came to Academy Showcase in the winter. It was in Florida, and that's when everything changed for me. You know, I got the opportunity to start one game against Montreal, Montreal's academy, and we ended up tying 1-1, but we were down a man the whole game. And you know, I think 20 minutes left, or yeah, 20 minutes left into the game, I scored. And ever since then, I played every single minute from then on until the end of spring. And so it was a huge obstacle because, you know, in Utah, I was, you know, fortunate to again be with Justice, and so he knew me, he knew how I played, so I played a lot of minutes. So going into Georgia, being the new guy, your senior year high school, not having an offer to get into college was super difficult. It was really hard, but at the end, I was a late recruit. I ended up getting an offer from Mercy University, so that happened, I think, in March. So it was like towards the very end of
Like
my
last
spring
minute.
season. Yeah, it was really last minute, like really last minute. So it's just it's a whirlwind. Like I never expected that it would happen like that, but it did. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was really hard. It was a really hard year. Just, you know, being like the new guy and not having like my boys with me either. It was really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. To have that, because you'd had that team, most of
Hmm.
that team together for so long, and you guys were all, you were brothers. I mean, you're
Yeah.
brothers, basically. You guys all grew up
Exactly.
together, and definitely difficult, you know. And I've seen kids, especially because of the pandemic, you know, just being moved around the country because of parents' jobs and different things. So I know
Yeah.
that like we've had players come to Sparta or leave Sparta because their parents are, moving. And so that's definitely something relatable. So,
Hmm.
what would you tell them as players? What advice would you give coming from a place of, I've experienced that? What would you tell them when they get to a new place?
I would just say stay disciplined. Do a lot of extra work on your own and just never give up because I could have easily given up at that point because I just wasn't playing. And then sometimes when we travel for games, I wasn't on the roster. It was really, really difficult, that first
Mm-hmm.
half of the season. But if I had given up, I would have never been able to get, my offer that I ended up, getting at the end of the day. So I would just say don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
Always, always work hard and always believe in yourself because especially being the new guy, the coach doesn't know you, the players may not like you, and they definitely don't know you. So you always have to believe in yourself or else, it's going to be really difficult. So that's the kind of advice I'd give them.
Is there anything that you focused on as a player, a youth player, that maybe didn't translate well? Probably didn't need to train as hard on something that maybe you
I think,
did.
I think definitely the physicality of the game is probably different now, but I think maybe focusing on the physical side a little too much, I would say, is the one thing, especially at a young age. Not super young. I mean, I started like 14 or 15, but I would say it's not the most important thing when you're younger. You should be focusing on your development of your game. Being tactically aware and technically sound. I would say
Mm-hmm.
those are the
Mm-hmm.
things as a young player you should really, really, really focus on and master because at the end of the day, you're gonna hit that growth spurt. At the end of the day, you're gonna put on the weight and the muscle to be there physically, but you don't have to focus on that so early. And I think I did maybe a little bit. That could have resulted in the injuries that I had as well too. But I would definitely say, just focus on the technical side of your game, especially as a young player, and you'll be fine.
So you got your offer from Mercer. So was
Mhm.
there any, I mean, I know if you had stayed in Utah that Justice would have done all that he could to try and
Yeah.
get you a scholarship where he could have, but was there anybody, were your coaches in Atlanta advocating for you, or was there somebody else that was trying to help you get where you eventually went, or was it just strictly you went out on the field, you did your thing and they contacted you? Do you know if there was
Yeah,
anybody?
yeah, I would say my coach Tony Annan at Georgia United, especially when I started, proving myself to him. I think he's the kind of coach. He's not like he stuck out his neck for his players, but he's gonna say you have to prove your worth to me, and I think
Mm-hmm.
once I did that, like towards the winter and into the spring, he really advocated for me, and it was a late addition, so I do understand. But I also reached out to coaches as well. I
Mm-hmm.
just sent out a mass email to just a bunch of schools. Just trying to do my part as well because at the end of the day, you really never know. And those teams they came to the showcase, and Mercer was just the school that gave me a full ride. Other
Mm-hmm.
teams were interested. It just wasn't a full ride at the time. It could have changed maybe after my sophomore year. But I just went ahead and went with my gut, and I think the full ride was just too convincing for me too. So I would have to give it
Right.
to Tony for sure. Everything he did to get me to Mercer. So I really am appreciative of it.
And how about, like, I know your
Yeah.
parents, but would you say how was their support for you as a player growing up? Like, I know, they had their difficult times and things, and especially, the relocation and everything, but how do you feel they did trying to get you where you got?
Yeah, I have to give it, a lot of, praise and thanks to my parents. Like especially growing up, immigrant parents from a completely different country, and it's really hard to provide for your family, but they did everything they could for me to stay in the club, and when we traveled to even if they couldn't be there, uh, get me sorted, and I would also often go with like Devin or Tanner, different players on my team. But they were really, really involved in my development too. My dad is crazy about soccer. He loves it too. So
Yeah, he was.
I'm sure you remember him yelling at me on the
Oh yeah, oh
sidelines.
yeah. He was always when you would score goals, he was cheering and running up and down the sideline just as much as
Yeah.
you were on the field. So,
And so, like, I come from a family who loves soccer. He
hmm
definitely loves it. I think he was into the game sometimes more than I was. But yeah, nah, he was really, really supportive. My mom, obviously was really supportive too. Just always trying to be there, especially like when I went to college too. They try to come to every single game just because Mercer's in Georgia, but it was like a 2 hour drive, so they came to like almost every single game that they could. So I really am appreciative of everything that they've done for me and sacrificed for me too.
yeah, we drive past the USANA building that your mom used to work
Oh
at,
yeah,
and Justice would be like, "Did you know Will's mom used to work there?" And it's like a joke because it's on the way to the airport, and so like every time we're going to or from the airport, he's like, "Do you know Will's mom used to work?" I'm like,
I
"Okay,"
completely
such an
forgot that
old
she
joke.
worked there. I
Old joke,
completely
old joke.
forgot. That's funny.
Having your parents come from Ivory Coast,
Hmm.
are they both from Ivory Coast?
Yeah, yeah, they both are.
And something that I had wondered, I mean, Justice and I both kind of wondered, did you ever consider playing for their national team?
Yeah, so I did consider it, and then I was really, really close recently. I got invited to their U23 national team, like IB camp, and that
Oh,
was a few years ago. Yeah, I was really close, but then I think the whole COVID thing happened, and
oh,
then unfortunately I just broke my leg too, and that's what kind
ugh,
of yeah, it just
yeah,
it sucked. So I was really, really
yeah.
close, and it was honestly it was a dream of mine to try to play for him because Drogba was like my favorite player growing up. So if I had to
Mm-hmm.
choose, I would probably choose Ivory Coast just because I was just so obsessed with Drogba and I loved Ivory Coast the way they played. But it was close with the U23 team, nothing with the senior team, like no official invitation, but
Right.
with the U23 team, we got an invitation. We were working on the passports and everything, but it
And
just it
then
just ended up
COVID
not.
hit
Yeah, COVID, and
and
then
your injury.
yeah, so it was close, but it just didn't end up happening.
Yeah. We had always wondered, so
Hmm.
that's cool to hear that that was something that you were working towards.
Yeah, yeah, it was really exciting time for me. I was really excited. I thought that was going to be like my chance to try to break it on like the international scene and try to
Mm-hmm.
get known from that standpoint, but it just didn't end up working out.
So, what was it like? So, for obviously anybody listening that doesn't know you, so
Hmm.
after you graduated high school, you went to Mercer, and
Yeah,
then you played through 3 years at Mercer.
I played all
I
my
think
4 years. Yeah,
all 4 years. Did you get drafted out of college
yeah, I did.
in the? And how was that? Because I mean, Justice was randomly there. I think no,
Yeah,
that was something else.
that was for the
Or
uh, All American thing is when I saw Justice in LA and Luis was there too.
yeah,
So that was like my
that was
junior
so
year.
random.
Yeah,
Because
it was crazy.
he had no idea that you guys were there, and he was
Yeah,
there for this other coaching thing,
yeah.
and so he was pretty excited that he was able to be there and see you guys. But what was it like being drafted into the MLS? I mean, I know you weren't like a first round pick, but I mean,
Hmm.
still to be able to say that you were a part of the MLS draft, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
We were pretty excited.
Looking back, it was amazing. But like, if when I was in it, I was a little disappointed because I feel like I should have gotten drafted a lot higher. But I think the reality of it is I went to maybe a quote unquote smaller school, so it didn't help my case to get
Hmm.
drafted higher. So at first, I was like, I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty upset because I thought I was gonna
Yeah.
be at least first or second round for sure, just based off the things that I did at school. But looking back at it, I mean, it's a really huge accomplishment because that I was Mercer's first ever MLS draft pick. So it
Yeah.
was it was really really special for me looking back at it. I mean, I now I can actually say like I was proud of that, really really proud of that because it took a lot of hard work and The year before I went into Mercer, they won 3 games, and they were
Mm-hmm.
like one of the worst teams in college soccer. And then like my freshman year, we had a huge class, like 13 guys. We ended up winning the conference, and I was able to get like a lot of accolades and honors as well. So I think that really helped my case when we're talking about getting drafted. Just all that work that my teammates and myself put in for those 4 years was really incredible. Just because it's never been done before, so
Mm-hmm.
it was really special.
And then how was your experiences in just being in, like, I mean, I guess you weren't necessarily in the MLS system, but you were. I mean,
Hmm.
you played for a couple of, I mean, they weren't the first teams, but you did play
Hmm.
for, I mean, you eventually were at Orlando,
Hmm.
their Orlando City's B team. I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. It was really special. Especially after I got drafted. I remember, I was on a flight, you know, next like day or so to meet the team. And my first experience with training with him, I was like, I was training with Matt Beasler, Kansas City, going against Graham Susi in training, and it was really good. Those first few weeks that I was there, and then unfortunately, again, I get injured, and things just went downhill from there. It was just, I think it's like a recurring theme in my career was like those injuries were really pivotal, and especially in big moments. With getting injured when I was there in preseason because when you're there when you get drafted you don't necessarily have a contract, so
mm-hmm.
they could just tell you to go home if you're not of any use to them, and so that's really difficult. And I think that's something that probably needs to change within the MLS, especially if you're drafting kids, and you should definitely give them a contract for at least 2 years, I think. And it was really
Mm-hmm.
difficult, getting injured at that time, and being eventually told that you're no longer with the team was really really hard for me. So at that time, I was going to Orlando. I think mentally I wasn't there in a good headspace to play, but it was really great still being in the organization, and you're there when Nani's there as well, and playing against
Mm-hmm.
and with really great players. So it was a great experience. I don't take anything away from it. It was a lot of fun, but I do wish that I could have done that a bit differently. That early part of my career, at least.
And how did you end up in Austria playing for that team? Because I know
Yeah.
there was another player that Justice coaches, Casey Lambert, that I think he
Hmm.
he played in Europe a little tiny bit after he graduated as well. So how
Hmm.
did that come about?
Yeah, it's just I think that one came about with connections. My college assistant coach put me in contact with this guy. His name is Pavel Kankura. He lives in Canada, but he used to play, if I'm not mistaken, for the Czech Republic national team. But he's a really prominent figure in Czech Republic, at least. And so he had a
Mm-hmm.
team over there that was in the first division. I forget their name, but they're a first division team, and they're interested, so they brought me on a trial. And so like I went over there in Czech Republic in Prague, and I was there for a few weeks. Again, what happened? Third or the second weekend, I get an injury, and it was really unfortunate. Once again, like I messed up my ankle really bad, and then I just couldn't train the rest of the way. But that's how I got to Europe at first, and then I met an agent there. He had connections in Austria, so I decided to stay back and try to get my fitness back, and train there like all winter. And then come January, I went on trial again. Ended up making that team, and that's just how I ended up there. Just through a crazy connection, and it was just really strange. It wasn't anything really planned to even go to Austria. My plan was to
Mm-hmm.
stay in Czech Republic and play in the first division there, and propel from there. But I guess that wasn't in the cards, and the Austria opportunity is what came in front of me, and I just took it.
So you've mentioned your kind of reoccurring injuries, and I
Hmm.
know that you have started your BC training
Yeah,
with Coda.
yeah.
Were you teammates
No, we
or
weren't
kind of?
teammates, but like we're friends. Like he's from
Okay.
Georgia, and like we would have like pickup soccer games, and that's how we met. Ultimately, he
Oh, okay.
actually, yeah, he's a bit younger than me. He's 23. He
Oh,
actually
okay.
went to like a camp when I was at Mercer, and I had no idea because he was like a younger guy, and I was on the team. And he told me he like remember like he was like looking up to me like, oh my gosh, that's him. And then now we're like doing this whole thing together. And so it's just really crazy that we've always kind of been around each other for a really long time now. But yeah, that's how we met. It was through a pickup soccer game.
So tell me a little bit about BC Train. I mean, I've obviously looked into it and everything, and I've
Mhm.
listened to the other podcasts you were on, and you guys talking about it. So tell me how, how it came to be and what you guys do, and where you're located and everything. So tell me about that.
Yeah, so how it came to be is, at first when I was done playing, one of my coworkers like wanted to learn how to play soccer. And it was just like kind of like a funny thing, I was like, fine, I could try to teach you how to play. I just taught him like the fundamentals. And I was also training Dakota actually at the time, because he was trying to get ready for trials. He played professionally in El Salvador, so he came back due to COVID. And so like I was training him and training like my coworker, and then like I kind of realized like, okay, maybe we can do something off of this. Maybe we can make a difference in the community, because if we can train a guy that has no idea how to play soccer, we could probably train kids who do have that base knowledge, and try to help them propel their career. And so that's kind of how it started. Now, like the whole idea about it is, injury prevention. I think that's the main thing that we want to harp, because from such a young age, again, I was getting injured so much, and it was just due to lack of knowledge, and probably just again using my bodies in ways I shouldn't have been using my body at such a young age. And
Mm-hmm.
we always want to put that awareness on our younger players, is you got to start doing the important things now. Like, we know it's boring, but if you do want to have longevity in your career, we believe it's really important to start when you're younger. Now, it doesn't mean that when you're 20 or older, it's too late. It's definitely not too late. That's just when you have to be extra cautious of your body, and do extra work to keep your body healthy. And so that was the whole
Mm-hmm.
idea about it, was the injury prevention, because we feel if you're not healthy, then you can't play to your best. Now, you're gonna have knocks, that's normal, but if you want to play at your best 100%, you got to be healthy. And so how we separate it is, Dakota takes care of like the injury prevention and the agility aspect of training, which is at the very beginning for the first 20 minutes or so. And then I take care of like the soccer specifics and the ball work, and player specific drills as well for the second half of the session. And so we use these animals as our logo, which is the lion and the gorilla, and we use them because we believe that the lion is the king of his respective kingdom, and the gorilla is the king of his respective kingdom. Meaning, the knowledge that Dakota has, the lion, he's the expert in the agility and injury prevention, and then the gorilla being me, the expert in knowledge I have to the game, and tying it together. We always say bridging
Mm-hmm.
the gap. So we want to mesh that injury prevention and agility with the soccer ability to create a great player.
How much of the obviously the game has developed over the years, but how much of your basic knowledge that you grew up being taught is stuff that you teach?
I think the majority of it, to be honest, just because I remember Justice focusing so much on the technical side of the game when we were younger, and that's why I'm really appreciative of it, because I see other coaches here, like, they don't really focus on the development of the player. And that's why I say like it's such a unique situation to be able to be with like an amazing coach like Justice from 4 to 17. The development of my game was really, really good. And we see, nowadays in club, or even academy and ECNL and all these different leagues that we were talking about, the development isn't really enforced at a young age. Like, sometimes they rather take the big physical player at 14 years old over the shorter technical player. And I just don't think Justice would do that. You know, he would take the more technical player. Obviously, you do need physical players. If you're physical and technical, it's a
Mm-hmm.
bonus. But that's what we do. We try to focus on the basics, and that's what we always say.
Mm-hmm.
Bringing it back to the basics is, your first touch, how you receive the ball, how the weight of pass. I always remember just saying weight of pass. Like that's the thing that stuck with me, and that's what I really harped in the training is weight of pass, weight of touch, the way you move off the ball, with the ball, and not complicating the game. So that's BC training to the core is that, and I learned that when I was even 6, 7 years old.
When you've played through, because I know Justice and his trainings, he tries to keep them very simplified, not complicated. Because you experienced so many different situations where you were playing soccer, were there ever times that you had coaches or trainers running exercises that you were kind of like, what's the point? Why is it so overcomplicated? Because I know that there are coaches that are like, if we do this super complicated thing, did you ever see that?
Yeah, I saw a lot, especially like with trainers that I had when I was over here in Georgia. It just seemed like they were complicating the game and putting down 1,000,001 cones on the field and trying to make the simplest thing so complicated, you know? And so that's what we like to do too at BC Training is simplifying the game. And I did get that from Justice too. The way our trainings were was simple and effective, but it made us so, so good. And that's just what
Mm-hmm.
soccer is. Like when you're playing a game, you don't have all these cones out there. It's strategic and you got to think for yourself and you got to
Mm-hmm.
be creative and simplifying the game. You're able to do that. When you complicate the game, you just overthink and you
Yeah.
lack the creativity, I think. So yeah, simplifying the game is so important. It is.
Is there, I mean, anything else that you want to share about your experience growing up or playing the game or any advice that you might have?
Yeah, I would say some advice I'd have is never stop enjoying the game because, I think ultimately I knew I wanted to stop or yeah, I knew I wanted to stop when I kind of stopped enjoying the game. And so, never lose if want to continue to pursue the game, you gotta be in love with it. You have to be obsessed with it and train as hard as you can. That doesn't mean train as hard as you can with your team. Obviously you need to do that, but train as hard as you can when no one else is watching. And I think that's the one of the main things I kind of learned leaving Utah. I was still train on my own, but leaving Utah and going to Georgia, I think I added that element to myself as a person and to my game was those extra hours by myself just because I just didn't know anybody. So that's the best thing to do, but it ended up working out in my favor. So never stop, believing in yourself and never stop loving the game because, it can be taken away from you in any moment. So just cherish it while you have it.
One other thing I didn't really touch on earlier
Mm-hmm.
is just how did you balance everything? Because I know that your team was a very high level team for the state of Utah, and you guys did travel a ton all the time throughout the year. How did you balance your school life, your personal life, if you ever had a job as a teenager before? I mean, I have no idea. I know
Yeah.
some of the kids ended up having to get jobs and things like that, but how did you manage it? It's definitely a lot different now with more electronics and things like
Mm-hmm.
that, but
Yeah. It was hard. I actually have a random memory. We had a game at Lone Peak, and I forgot who we played though. But it was like a late night game, and I remember like coming home late at night and having to do homework directly after the game, and I was up till like 2 in the morning. And I have to wake up the next morning and go to school, and it was really difficult, especially back then. What you're saying, the technology wasn't as advanced for a younger kid to have access to certain things. It was pretty difficult to juggle schoolwork, your social life too, working and soccer. There were some times, like unfortunately, you have to miss practice just because you had other obligations, like maybe to your family or something. I remember, I think we had quite a few guys as well, like Lexi, who he had to work a lot of the time, so he couldn't be at practice a lot. And so, I think it was every player had some kind of obstacle they had to get over, whether it was work or school. And mine was definitely the schoolwork was difficult for me just because I was up late at night and wouldn't get much sleep. But I mean, hey, it was definitely worth it. But it was hard. It was really,
Yeah.
really hard juggling all that. And I think it helped though when going to college because it was kind of the same thing. You would be training. Our trainings were like 6 or 7 a.m. So I'm up late at night trying to finish my schoolwork. Then I have to wake up a few hours later and go to training. Then I have to stay up and go to class. And then I have weights at three p.m. or something like that. And then I have games on the
Mm-hmm.
weekends or 2 times a week. So it's really, really hard. But I think, getting that kind of rhythm younger helped me out in college at the end of the day. So balance is definitely important.
Yeah, I know that there are some players who when they go away to
Hmm.
college, it's kind of a culture shock to them because,
Yeah.
maybe their parents traveled with them all the time or, they didn't know how to do stuff on their own. And so I kind of get the feeling that your scenario helped you be ready for that. Would
Yeah.
you agree?
I definitely think it helps, because my parents weren't always home, because they had to work a lot. So, that's obviously not being with your family as much. But then also going on trips, remember just, driving the car, even with like Clayton Kilpack and all these other parents. So like I wasn't with my family all the time. I was often traveling alone and then juggling the schoolwork and soccer as well. So I think it's just like it was probably more normal to me at the end of the day going to Mercer and then still kind of being by yourself, but you're not really by yourself, but you're there alone
Mm-hmm.
and the schoolwork is still piling on top of you. Then you have to, perform your best in soccer and you are traveling on the road still. So you have to have your schoolwork on the road and everything. So it seems pretty normal, probably. I'm looking back at it, but when I was in it, I definitely didn't realize it like that.
Thank you so
Awesome.
much for doing this for me, Will.
Yeah. No, thank you for having me.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to today's episode. I really hope that you guys enjoyed that interview with Will. I had a lot of fun doing it, and there was a lot of stuff that I cut out because we were just catching up. And so that was a lot of fun to be able to see him after so long. But thank you to Will for the interview, and thank you to everybody who tuned in today. Again, make sure you follow me on Instagram, Kick It with Katie Podcast. All of this information will be in the show description. If you want to get in touch with Will, he is on Instagram at b.c.training, and you can find them there. That information will be in the show notes. But thank you again for tuning in today. Please make sure to, again, on Apple Podcasts, give us a 5-star review. Please make sure you share this podcast so that more people will be able to hear our stories. So thank you guys for kicking it with me, and have a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Kick It with Katie Podcast _ between all the words. You can reach out to me with questions at kickitwithkatiepod@gmail.com. I also have a feature with SpeakPipe where you can leave me your own voicemail message if you want to be featured on the podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.